Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ticket with Tippett, the best Dynasty fantasy football channel on all social media platforms. And today we are going over my top 5 quarterback rankings for the 2026 rookie draft class as far as Dynasty fantasy football goes. And the reason we're only going over 5 is because there's probably only going to be 5 that matter from this quarterback class. It's not too deep. Everybody knows that going into this draft. My rating system is based off of a 42-80 scale, and it's basically all of the categories combined, and they're weighted categories. So some categories are worth more than others, just depending on how significant the category is when it comes to Dynasty Fantasy Football. And then it's all divided by the number of categories, and then we get our overall. So if you're ready to go, buckle in and let's get to it. And we're going to start with the obvious 101. 101, as far as the NFL draft goes, he's probably going to go somewhere in between the 102 to 105 range in most rookie dynasty drafts. And that's Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana. And he is by far and away the most complete and polished prospect at the quarterback position in this draft class. He has the most precise timing and accuracy out of any quarterback that is in this class. I think the closest one to that, as far as timing and accuracy goes, would be Carson Beck. But we didn't see a lot of that downfield from Carson Beck, and that's where Fernando Mendoza really takes leaps and strides over a guy like Carson Beck and is really able to do it on all levels of the field. And with Kurt Cignetti coming over to Indiana, we saw a great amount of quick release and great decision making when it comes to finding open receivers, making the right decisions, not turning the ball over. That was a big thing. He didn't have too many turnovers this year at Indiana, and that was a big stepping point forward for Mendoza to go into this draft class as the number 1 overall pick. And at 6'5", 225, he's got that ideal thick frame that quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators and head coaches love to see out of a prospect like this. He is one of the most clutch performers that we've seen in recent memory, probably dating back to the legs of Joe Burrow, with how clutch Mendoza was in those primetime situations in big games. It seemed like it didn't phase him that much, and that's why I have confidence going in that he's going to be a solid quarterback for Dynasty. Is he going to be a Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels? Maybe not, but is he going to be a Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, where every now and then he's going to get you into the top 10 quarterbacks and be pretty consistent at it? Maybe even like a Dak Prescott more so. I think that that's the realm that we're looking at when it comes to Fernando Mendoza. And the biggest thing for him is his pocket awareness. Sometimes he could panic in the pocket, but that is the only real downside to his game. Like I said, the turnovers, he fixed that, so that wasn't really a big concern. And then it's just the pocket awareness. So he's just got to make sure that, he's aware of where he is in the pocket, where the pressure is, being able to move outside of the pocket. He can use his legs sometimes, but it's not his greatest weapon. And to kind of go along with what I said earlier, let's look at some stats here. Yards per attempt, he throws the ball downfield a ton. And when you have guys like Omar Cooper Jr. and Elijah Surratt on the outside, that makes it a little bit easier. And then the biggest thing for him was that 20+ yard completion percentage. He was 6th in the country at 52.5%. And that's a great number to have for throwing the ball downfield. And he's got some deep threat targets and some vertical stretchers at the wide receiver position in Las Vegas if he gets drafted there or when he gets drafted there. And number 2 here is Ty Simpson. As you can see, Ty Simpson, about 3-point deduction from Fernando Mendoza, and that's for a reason. He's going to go probably in the late first round. And we don't know exactly where he goes, so that's going to be the biggest determining factor of where he goes in dynasty drafts. But I could see him going anywhere from pick 107 all the way back to pick 205, just depending on what happens, the situation that he goes to, where he gets drafted in the NFL draft. And some of the reasons that he could drop is just because of the inexperience. He doesn't have a ton of starts. This was his first true season starting as a college quarterback, and he doesn't have a ton of starts outside of that. So big questions around Ty Simpson and his inexperience as a starting quarterback. And that's the reason that guys like Dante Moore went back, Lenora Sellers went back. So Ty Simpson is taking a big leap here, and we know that in the past, quarterbacks don't have the greatest track record when they don't have a ton of starts in college. But to some of the good things in Ty Simpson's game, we have elite intermediate accuracy. I think he's the best passer in this class when it comes to the intermediate routes and throws that he has to make. And he has solid mechanics and footwork. So if you watch his tape and watch, like his pro day, you'll see that Ty Simpson probably has the best footwork and mechanics in this class outside of Fernando Mendoza. And he is a high IQ quarterback. For having a little amount of starts, he has proven that, he has high IQ. late into 2025, he kind of got that injury that nicked him a little bit. So I can see where people kind of see that he fell off, and the stats do show that he fell off. But I would say don't panic on Ty Simpson. Hopefully, he goes to a team where he can sit for a year, like maybe a Pittsburgh. I know that's where he's linked to a lot. Even places like Arizona. I think if he went and sat at Arizona for a year, let Gardner Minshew or Jacoby Brissett really take over this year, and let Ty Simpson kind of develop under Mike LaFleur, because Mike LaFleur comes from that Sean McVay system. So I'd like to see somehow that transgress into his situation and where he goes in the NFL. And quarterback number 3 here is Carson Beck. I think his combine and more than likely his pro day is going to prove why he should be the third quarterback taken in Dynasty and probably in the NFL draft. I think that he's getting super overlooked. I think his mechanics are great. He has great footwork and he has high IQ and accuracy. So, and he's one of the most tenured guys in this draft. He has some of the I think he has maybe has the highest amount of starts in his college career going into the NFL draft. So that's a big plus for Carson Beck when guys come out of college like that. And he was, I mean, a top recruit coming out of, Georgia there. So I don't see how Carson Beck doesn't finish as the third quarterback taken off the board in the NFL draft, because I think teams are just going to want a quarterback. I mean, he might turn into like one of these journeyman quarterbacks that just bounces around the league, but every year he's somewhat decent enough to find a starting job somewhere. So don't be surprised if Carson Beck turns into that in the NFL. And some of the reasons for that: his high composure and deep ball accuracy. He's right up there with Fernando Mendoza when it comes to 20 plus yard completions. He's ninth in the country at 51%. So, I mean, and his completion percentage is 74.3%. That was second in the nation. So he's got some elite accuracy when it comes to being able to throw the ball down the field, intermediate, short routes. It didn't matter. He was dropping dimes everywhere. My biggest take is that, like I said, he's kind of a game manager. I could see him becoming kind of a Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, just these guys that are just there, Ryan Fitzpatrick type, where they're just there and they're good enough to go find a job somewhere, right? So that's where I see Carson Beck. But you can see my rating is pretty far down from where Ty Simpson's is, 66.9. He just doesn't flash elite traits that Ty Simpson does. So Ty Simpson does have, a better arm than him, and he does have better accuracy over intermediate routes, where Carson Beck is able to lob the ball deep. He had Malachi Tony on his team as well. So that's going to always help you. Those Alabama receivers didn't really play up to par for Ty Simpson. There were a lot of drops for Ty Simpson. If you go and look at like wide receiver stats from Alabama and see how many drops they had, that's the difference, I think, in Carson Beck and Ty Simpson, is that Carson Beck had all the tools around him to succeed, whereas Ty Simpson had some tools around him, but they didn't play up to par. So that's why I think Carson Beck is still a little bit lower. If you go watch film, you'll see what I'm talking about as far as Carson Beck goes. And my number 4 quarterback here is Garrett Nussmeier, a guy who was injury riddled in 2025. If you go back and watch his 2024 tape, it is so much better. So this is why I still have him close up to Carson Beck. He's at a 64.7 in my rating system. So just below Carson Beck. I think they're probably going to be taking around the same draft pick, just to obviously different teams. So it depends on where these guys go. I think for guys like Carson Beck, Garrett Nussmeier, it's all about situation and where they fall to and who their head coach or offensive coordinator is. So the biggest thing for Garrett Nussmeier is that he's got somewhat of a smaller frame, 6'1", 205. So not the tallest and not the thickest guy when it comes to frame for a quarterback. So that's one big thing that we got to look for. But he does have that gunslinger mentality. So he will throw the ball wherever, whenever. And that's a problem when it comes to the NFL. So you'll see here his 20 plus yard completion percentage in 2025, 30%, was tied for 121st. That is bottom third of that category in the nation. So the deep ball accuracy has got to get better. And I think part of the reason for that, one, is he's a shorter guy. All the shorter guys pretty much have trouble seeing down the field and actually getting a gauge for how far their players are down the field because they can't see you over the offensive line. So that's going to be a big thing for Nussmeier. Like I said, he's just got to fall into the right situation, and he's got to limit the turnovers. So if he can kind of turn more into a Carson Beck where he can manage the game, that's where I think he has the advantage over a Carson Beck, because he does have elite arm talent. And then we have the youngest guy pretty much in the draft class at Drew Allar. He's 21 years old. 6'5", 235. So kind of the same thing as Mendoza, has that elite frame that quarterback coaches are dying to have. So he's super young. He's a raw prospect, but the accuracy issues are extreme across all levels of the field. So that is something that he really, really needs to improve on when he gets to the NFL level. And he's going to really need to sit behind a really good quarterback and figure out his footwork and mechanics because he has the elite arm strength and talent to become a good quarterback and be able to throw the ball all over the field whenever he wants. But he has to take into account that he needs to get his mechanics straight, he needs to get his footwork down, and he needs to find the right guys and make good decisions. And for a guy who has elite arm strength and talent, his big time throw percentage at 2.5% was 145th, again, bottom third in this ranking system. So, I mean, the big time throws, there he has the arm to do it, but the accuracy is so far off that 2.5% is minimal compared to the top guys. And you'll see he sits kind of like at the lower part of the top echelon of quarterbacks in completion percentage as well, tied for 55th at 60, about 65%. So we'd like to see that increase as well. Drew Aller will absolutely be a project quarterback, and he's going to have to be a project for a team that is willing to take a chance on a guy like that. So, like I said, this is a pretty short and simple video. There's nothing really crazy that I want to get into on any other quarterback in this class. These are the 5 guys that I feel like had the best chance to do anything in the NFL. Obviously, with Mendoza and Ty Simpson more than likely getting the most chances to do that. So, if you have any disagreements or you have somebody that you'd rather put into your top 5, like I don't know, a Taylor Green, maybe a Cade Klubnik, I don't know what other guys would reach that. And these guys just have been better in years past and have shown things in years past that they could end up getting an opportunity because of what they showed in 2024 or 2023. So I'd like to see where these guys go, where their situation and landing spots are, because I think that's the biggest thing for at least 4 of these guys, because we know where Mendoza's going. So the 4 of these guys need to find out where they're going. And then from there, we can kind of break down a little bit more and really categorize them into tiers, because I think that's the biggest thing is that you can rank these guys, 2 through 5, but some people will have one a little bit higher than the other. I think everybody's pretty much got Mendoza and Simpson at 1 and 2, but from 3 to 5, we can really break down where they go and what the situation is and really be able to tier them off of that now. So we'll see where they go in the NFL draft. We'll make another video right after the NFL draft of who the biggest winners and losers were at each position, and we'll go through each position in single videos and kind of break down the movement and changes that we see depending on where they're drafted and what position they're drafted in. So, but other than that, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you subscribe, like, and share, and comment below, like I said, who your changes would be and who you would throw in here possibly into the top 5 if I didn't have them in my top 5. So other than that, thank you guys for stopping by. Peace, dope, and love, and we'll see you next time.